Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go.
Let's make sure I take myself off of mute. See, there we go. See, now I'm good now. So everybody out there watching, now you can hear what I'm saying. Okay. I hate when I do that. I had to make sure, I wasn't talking during the musical interlude and all that other good stuff. So yeah, man, I'm about to get right into the lesson. Like I told you, it's hot in here. I know y'all probably just missed maybe about 30 seconds, but I wasn't talking that long. That's all I said, man. I just want to thank everybody out there, man, who's been supporting this, man, who's been supporting the channel since the old Brown Paper Bag podcast days, man. I really appreciate the support. Make sure y'all share the show. Make sure you like the show, man. Add a comment, man. Leave me something. We'll get right into it. But without further ado, man, let me go ahead and get into this lesson because, like I said, it's hot in here. So I'm going to get into it because, like I said, I ain't trying to be sweating up the screen like Whitney Houston in her later career. But once again, apologies if I was on mute when you first turned it on, but let's get into it. All right. So tonight's topic is Moses, a prince, a general, and a prophet. All right. Boom. All right. So this is something, that I had to deal with this week. So I said, open the discussion, right? What happens when our faith is tested, right? From a family tragedy to relationship to finances or any other source of stress. All right. We can sometimes begin to doubt our creator. All right. If you believe in the Bible and the lessons that it teaches, then you should know that adversity is just a part of life. I don't know what a part-time life that look like Patron life. I don't know why that's like, but it's supposed to be part of life. Okay. And it said, what should give you clarity is what happens after your trial. And what I mean by that is, there are numerous times in the Bible where people were tested to see how they would react with adversity, because it's one thing when everything is going great, but what happens when you meet that adversity or that trial? Will you still stand on all your beliefs, or will you start to get shaky with your beliefs or whatnot? I'm gonna turn myself off for a second just so I can turn off my phone, just so we don't have to hear no notifications and all that good stuff the whole time. So just want to let everybody know. Let me cut that off. All right, here we go. So hopefully everybody out there can hear me, man. If you're watching, man, just shoot me a comment so I know everybody can hear me. But if you look at numerous people in the Bible, after they were tested, then God was also a God of restoration. So that's something that you got to take in to point, right? So if you're dealing with a situation, and then after the situation you don't get no restoration, then that sounds like a you issue to me. I'm not gonna tell you how to believe. I'm not gonna tell you what to do. But it's like if you went through something and then you believed and you had faith through it, and then at the end of it, you still was like worse off than you started, or you didn't get no kind of restoration, then I'm gonna say that probably was a, as I say, that's a you problem. So let me go ahead and put myself back up here real quick. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it, man. Your personal study questions. Let me see if I can move myself. I don't want myself right there. Well, you know what? I'm just gonna put myself right here. Yeah. All right. So, what do you believe daily life was like during this time? And what I mean by daily life is we're starting now to get to remember the idea of Israel has not been fully formed yet, right? So Israel is not a country. So, excuse me. So at this time, you have empires like Egypt that are pretty dominant right now. You have some empires in Arabia yet. I'm not sure if the Persians and things kind of came to power, not yet. You have the Babylonians haven't really came to power yet either, but you just really got, kind of some small empires that the Phoenicians are around this time as well. So then you got a couple of other empires in Africa that were going, like the Kingdom of Kush, the Libyans, the Ethiopians, people like that. So that's just what I want to say. Like as a Israelite or even as an Egyptian or whichever country you might feel like you identify, what do you think everyday life was like back then? You know what I mean? Because I know, and think of it from a spiritual aspect, like, because we know they didn't go to church. We know they didn't do some of the things we do in modern times. So just kind of think about that for a while. All right. And then the other question that I have is, have you ever used other language to help gain understanding? What is that? What that means is, like, for example, I speak Spanish, right? So when I try to get understanding, sometimes I will look at different languages like Latin, French, Spanish, whatever I can translate, Russian, Japanese, to kind of sort of confirm things sometimes. So have you ever used any other languages to help you gain your understanding? So something just to think about real quick. All right, let's go on to the next slide. And then, like I said, it's getting too hot and I'm not about to be sweating all over the screen tonight. So let me go ahead and pull myself off camera and let's get into the lesson. All right, so as always, the blueletterbible.org, the Amplified Bible, the 54 complete Apocrypha, the 2022, the Tanakh with the, I guess you could call it more modern Hebrew, not the ancient Paleo or Assyrian Hebrew, and the Antiquity of Jews by Flavius Josephus. The reason, once again, I always explain why I like using him as a source is because if you use a King James Bible, I believe that Bible was copyrighted around 1611. So Flavius Josephus wrote about the majority of the things that happened in the Old Testament as a reference. Okay. So if you think about that, then it kind of sort of goes before those councils of Nicaea. Was it Nicaea or Nicaea? I forgot how you say it, but the council where they decided which books would go into the Bible, what was going to be canon or not. They kind of got into all of those things. So basically what I want to do is just, kind of put that out there. Let's go ahead and get into it, man. Moses was born to Amram and Jochebed around the year AN 1612. And I found out AN is just the way they notate it, but it matches up to BC because when I went and Josephus also wrote about Alexander the Great. And I think Alexander the Great died in 535 BC. And when I went and looked at Josephus, he had 535 AN. So when I see AN, that also means BC. Okay, so figured that part out. So yay me. All right. So Moses means one that is saved from the water. That's going to be Strong's H4872, and that's what Moses looks like in the Hebrew. Okay, but it's Moshe in Hebrew. It's not Moses. It's Moshe. All right. Exodus 2 verse 3 says the daughter of Pharaoh said this is one of the Hebrews' children. Now, I had brought this up a while before, and I know when I grew up, I saw the 10 Commandments, right, with Charlton Heston. So if we go with the more modern belief that, based on the way, I guess you could even say they've been depicted in movies. I mean, I think Prince of Egypt was done a little better, but, if you look at the way most of the time people from Israel are depicted, right? So somebody could say, well, it was obvious he was a Hebrew because we know what the Egyptians look like. So he would have been the complete opposite. In my opinion, based on if you watch the other podcasts that I've done, Abraham started the tradition where they would circumcise on the 8th day. So I believe the baby was circumcised. And since, if I'm not mistaken, I don't believe Egyptians circumcised themselves, or at least at this time point, I get to the time period of when this was, but Egyptians didn't circumcise. So I believe that's how she knew this is one of the Hebrew children, because she saw it was circumcised. And Josephus says the daughter of Pharaoh was named Thermusis. Okay, so I'm gonna come back to that, and that's found in Antiquities of the Jews, book 2, chapter 9, section 5. Let's get into Moses' Egyptian mother. Some biblical scholars place the birth of Moses to 1532 BC. If you look on the other slide, I said that Josephus said 1512. So it's about a 20-year gap between what most biblical scholars mean and Josephus. So take that with a grain of salt. She was the queen regent in 1479 BC. And based on that, Moses would have been born during the reign of Amenhotep I. And that would mean his mother would have possibly been Queen Hatshepsut. Okay, so if you know who that is in Egyptian history, then that would have been the one who found Moses in the reeds. Okay, Ramses or Thutmose. Okay, some scholars say Ramses the first was pharaoh who lived for Moses' return from after he returned from Midian, but he reigned 200 years later. Okay, so the pharaoh that was, in the Ten Commandments movie, the pharaoh, to let my people go. Oh, and once again, I forgot to shout out the intro title sequence is done by one of my friends who I went to school with, named Chanel Ramsey. Dr. Chanel Ramsey. She's singing on that, and I also appreciate her for allowing me to use that without getting the copyright strike, man. So her Go Down Moses rendition, which I believe she wrote as well. I appreciate letting me use that. So shout out to Dr. Chanel Ramsey for allowing me to use that. But if you look at when Ramses lived, it's kind of hard to kind of say based on where Josephus said he was born, and most scholars say he was born around the 1500s at least. So Ramses reigned about the 1200s, so that might have been 200 to 300 years later. So depending on which birth year you use would change the pharaoh during the plagues and the Exodus. So it was either Thutmose II or Thutmose III. Okay. All right, I'm gonna give you a quick little Google break so you can go and just kind of check and see where Ramses was born, like when he reigned, what dynasty was that, and when Thutmose reigned. So, and then you can also check on Hatshepsut to see if that matches up as well.
Okay, let's go. Okay, let's go. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Okay.
Destruction has overtaken my people because they have no knowledge, because you have given up.
Okay.
All right. So real quick, I just want to talk about slavery in Egypt because if you Google, like a lot of people try to say there's no evidence of the Exodus in like history. It's not on the walls. It hasn't been found in any of the temples. Hasn't been found in any of the pyramids. No text, no nothing to basically prove the Exodus is real. And I always say, well, there is evidence, but it just depends on which people you're looking for. You understand what I'm saying? So if you're looking for a lighter skinned people to be going through some sort of slavery in Egypt, then that's probably the reason why experts haven't been able to find it. But if you're looking for brown skinned people, there's plenty of evidence of like if you look at the one on the right, those people look like they're making bricks of some sort. And if you remember the story with Pharaoh, they were making bricks, and he was the one where like I think after maybe one of the first couple of plagues, he was like he wasn't gonna get them any materials to make bricks, but he still had the same quota. So think about that. Real quickly, I want to talk about the Hyksos people. All right, pictured are pictures of the Hyksos people. With some people, I think Josephus said the Hyksos have a relation, or they are the Jews, as he put it. So if you look at the Hyksos people, these are the people. Once again, I want you to, look at the garment. Once again, if you remember, well, not if you remember, I haven't gotten to the laws yet, which I'm going to get to. But if you look at the garment does have fringes on it. So that's something to keep in mind, the fringe garment, because that will be a trend with later once Moses creates the law, he makes that a law as well as a dress code. So then that way, you can basically separate the people. So he makes fringes a Israelite dress code. So the Hyksos people, like I said, the name of the Hyksos, or the way it was even kind of determined, was it means like shepherd kings, okay? Like shepherd kings, and they ruled, they don't want to say they ruled, but they were in the area of Egypt for about, it kind of sort of matches up to the 400 years after. So it kind of matches up around the time of, technically around the time of Joseph too. A lot of people have said they were Canaanite people, but I think it could be very easy to get Jacob and his family confused, or Israel and his family confused, because they came out of the land of Canaan. They were only 70 people. So of course it would make sense if the people who were occupying the northern section of of Egypt, because remember that they were shepherds, right? So that type of thing was done in the northern section of Egypt, okay? So it only makes sense. So once again, I'm not saying, or I'm trying to confirm that the Hyksos are the descendants of the Israelites or whatnot, but it is possible. But this is just another one of those historical things, once again, that you can do on your own time. You can go say, oh, well, this doesn't match up. This is this. Once again, if we're using carbon dating, some people say the Hyksos were too early, or Joseph was this or that. So when you're using carbon dating, you got to remember, like, there's a 600-year margin of error. So you got to take that with a grain of salt sometimes if the dates don't specifically match up based on, like, we're using carbon dating to try to find out how old or how new something is, okay? So let's keep going. All right, so we got the Hyksos people. All right, Moses the general. All right, Josephus says that Moses was the leader of the Egyptian forces against the Ethiopian invasion. All right, it says that he said that Moses was basically appointed as the general. I think he was somewhere between 18 years old. And Josephus said that Moses was a brilliant strategist who once employed snakes and birds to defeat the Ethiopians, and that can be found in the Antiquities of the Jews, chapter 2. Chapter 2. Book 2, chapter 10. Section 1. All right. And then in the book of Jasher, chapter 72, it says that Moses fled Egypt into the land of Kush and later became the king of Kush for around 40 years, which kind of matches up to the time period before he later went to Midian. Okay. Moses the prophet. Okay. Most biblical scholars credit Moses with the writing of the majority of the Torah, which would be the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. There's one part about that I want to say. In the book of Josephus, it doesn't actually say that Moses died. In the Enoch way of kind of doing it, like Moses kind of wanted to go away from the people, the book of Josephus says that Moses was carried off in a whirlwind. So we see that later on with the prophet Elijah. We saw it with Enoch before when I talked about that. And allegedly, right, this is in the book of Josephus, he said that Moses was carried away in a whirlwind as well. So, but you got to remember, he does write about his death. So that's something, that you have to take with a grain of salt, because if Moses wrote the first couple of books of the Bible, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, then it's kind of weird he would write, and Moses died, right? So I believe the Bible says he died around, and he was 120 years old, but Josephus says that he was taken away by a whirlwind. So once again, take that. Moses created the legal system by which all Israelites follow. So a lot of times when you talk about the law, the Levitical law that's in, or the laws, statutes, and commandments that's all throughout Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, Moses is the one who is credited as creating the legal system. So the one thing that I want to kind of point out is it is a legal code. It's a legal system. There are methods of how to resolve disputes in there, property disputes, marital disputes, relationship disputes. There's a lot of things in there. I'm going to get to it. And while I'm right here talking about Moses the prophet, let me just explain why I'm doing things in order. Because some people say, well, what about Joseph? Why don't you talk about him? And why did you talk? I'm doing this for a reason, because I'm trying to hit like major biblical figures. Then you're going to see who I'm going to go to next, and I'll explain that at the end of the show. But the plan is, or what I'm trying to do, is just establish a basic foundation for biblical learning. Because if I start going into some of those extra stories without basically hitting what I consider the major characters, then sometimes you can get lost. Okay, if you're a new believer, or if you just maybe have never been taught some of these things. So I believe in establishing the foundation first, and then we'll come back. So the reason why I'm talking about Moses is also because I'm talking about the laws, and I'll get into that after 2 weeks from now. Okay, so the curses / blessings found in Deuteronomy chapter 28 are the basis of most who claim to be the legitimate children of Israel. All right, you got the Black Hebrew Israelites basically saying, if you read through Deuteronomy 28, I believe starting around verse 15, it says, and if you will not hearken to the voice of your God, these are the things that will happen. So, real quickly, let me go in my Bible real quick, and I'll just kind of tell you. I'm not gonna go through all of it, of course, but in Deuteronomy 28, like I said, right around, it's called the consequence, and I use the Amplified Bible. The consequence of disobedience. But it shall come about, verse 15. But it shall come about, if you do not listen to and obey the voice of your God, being careful to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I am commanding you today, then all these curses will come and overtake you. You will be cursed in the city and cursed in the field. Your basket and your kneading bowl will be cursed. The offspring of your body and produce of your land, the offspring of your herd, and the young of your flock will be cursed. You will be cursed when you go in, and you will be cursed when you go out. Okay. Some of the ones that a lot of people point to, especially you'll be pledged, like number 30, you'll be pledged to marry a wife, but another man will be intimate with her. You will build a house, but you will not live in it. You will plant a vineyard, but you will not use its fruit. Okay. Your sons, especially verse 32, your sons and daughters will be given to another people while your eyes look on and long for them continually, but there will be nothing you can do. A people whom you do not know will eat the produce of your land and all the products of your labor, and you will never be anything but oppressed and exploited and crushed continually. All right. So when you read those curses in Deuteronomy 28, that's the base, especially like in the Hebrew Israelites, right? Because you got to say, well, whoever wants to claim to be the children in the Bible or the people of the Bible, they have to be able to show that historically where the curses in Deuteronomy took place. You also have to be able to show where, it makes sense. So I just say, gather up as much information as you want, and you can come to your own conclusions who you think fits that people in chapter 28. I haven't got into like how I believe and stuff like that yet. So, I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying you can read Deuteronomy 28 starting at verse 15, and you can come to your own understanding. All right. All right. Next time, man. I know this is kind of quick, and I know everybody's like, what about the 10 plagues? Once again, this is basic. I think a lot of people know about the 10 plagues. A lot of people know about the things about Moses. But real quick, I'm going to go back a slide before I get into that. Because I think a lot of people, when they talk about Moses, it's certain things about Moses, once again, that you want to try to gain some sort of understanding for it, right? You got to remember like some things about Moses. It's not about, like, a lot of people want to say, oh, it's about race. It's not about race. It's just about accuracy, right? So let's go back and I'll just talk briefly about when Moses was unsure, and he said, how will the people know that you have like basically sent me? This is like dealing with the burning bush. So everybody know he had his staff with him, and when he threw his staff down, it turned into a snake. All right. And when he touched it again, it became, his staff again. But then he also said another sign that he would show is he would put his hand inside his bosom, and when he pulled it out, it became leprous and white as snow. So I've heard some people say that in the Bible, like, for example, when it said Cain was cursed and he was marked. Some people believe that the descendants of Cain are white people as well. I don't know, because it never says how he was marked. But some people say he was marked by losing his pigmentation, which to me, I can't confirm nor deny that. It just says he was marked. But in the Bible, and especially when we get into the Levitical law and things like that, when it talks about people who have leprosy or even some curses that come as far as leprosy are concerned, they did lose their pigment, right? Because a lot of people point to, or they say a confirmation that Moses was, I guess, Caucasian, you know, he was a European descent, was when he married a wife, the Ethiopian. And people say, oh, the reason why everybody got mad is because he married an Ethiopian woman. So that means he had to be the opposite. But back then, you got to go back to remember Esau, right? Esau made Isaac and Rebekah upset because he married two Canaanite women. You see what I'm saying? So we know the Canaanites were black also. So, I mean, or not, what would it say, descendants of Ham? And you know, Ham is responsible for the majority of, not all, the African nations. So it's not a skin color thing. You understand what I'm saying? It was, he married somebody outside the nation of Israel. And I really believe that's why they got upset, okay? So we got to just kind of think about that. If Moses was going to show a multitude of people, and it said his skin became leprous, right? So let's just go back and think about the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston. If Moses was going to put his hand into his bosom as Charlton Heston and then pull it back out, and then it said it turned to white as snow, I don't know how much of a dramatic effect that is versus, you know, shout out to Isaac Hayes. He had an album called Black Moses. So if Isaac Hayes put his hand inside his bosom and pulled it out and it became white as snow, to me, that's a much more drastic effect, okay? So let me go ahead and get into this real quick. All right, next, I'm skipping straight to the Messiah because, and I'll explain that next week when I get into it, but this is going to be what I call the battle of the Messiahs, all right? It says, let the battle of the Messiahs begin, all right? I make a case for white Jesus and black Jesus on the next episode. I'm going to discuss the Immaculate Conception, the disciples, and the life of arguably the most important man in the history of the world. So some people say, you know, Jesus is a fictional character. He never existed. I'm going to get into some of that as well. But the thing about it is, if he's real or whether he's fake, he's still, or the idea of him is still one of the most powerful ideas that is ever created. I mean, you got people like, great people. Great people who have lived from, you know, Genghis Khan, Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, all the Egyptian pharaohs. You think about some people in the more modern times, you know, I know people are going to be mad, Christopher Columbus, some of the explorers that were doing some bad things, right? But they're still great because they're known throughout history. You know, George Washington, people like that, you know what I mean? Like people, Napoleon. We have all these great people out history, but I don't think anybody compares to the idea of Jesus Christ, okay? So I think he's one of the most important historical figures in history, you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to get into that. Like I said, it's going to be white Jesus versus black Jesus. I'm going to make a case for both. All right, you can decide which one you want to follow or believe in. But once again, I'm going to also get into the mythological aspect of Jesus Christ as well, just so every side is explained. But the reason why I'm skipping from Moses to the Messiah, you're going to have to tune in next week to find that out. Yeah, man, like I told you, man, if you tuned in earlier, I appreciate you tuning in. I'm gonna go ahead and let this go. Like I said, man, you know, I must be tapping into the old ancestors or whatnot, because like I said, AC is not kicking right now. So like I said, I'm in here in the sweat box right now. So I didn't, you know, I wanted to give Moses his just due, but I also didn't want to go through the stories that everybody's heard. You know, let my people go, the 10 plagues, wandering around the wilderness. We're going to come back to that because those things will be important later. But for right now, I just want to give you a basic of who Moses was and also offer maybe some things that you might not have heard before. So once again, if you have any questions, you know, you can always let me put that back up on the screen real quick. Should have did this. All right, once again, let me see. Go back to this one. All right, so you can always follow me at the Kung Fu Hebrew on Twitter. You can follow Libre TV on YouTube, or if you have any questions that you'd like me to answer on air, you understand, you can write me at kungfuhebrew@yahoo.com. And like I said, man, I'm about to head home. Like I said, Sweatbox, get up out of here. Go get us some AC. Y'all be blessed, man. Shabbat shalom. And I will see y'all again next Friday.